Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Killer Author Club. And it's not just another episode. We are so excited to welcome the one and the only Ruth Ware into the Killer Author Club. So grab a cocktail, get your questions ready, and we will start the episode in just a minute.
Thought you really loved me, guess I was wrong. Thought you'd never leave me, guess I was dumb. Waited like forever to be your plus one, but I guess you were done.
Hi again, everybody. I am so glad to have you all here watching, whether you're watching on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube, wherever you're watching. We're so happy you're here. And we are also super glad to have Ruth Ware, as I keep saying. Okay, anyway, I am Killer Kara Ruda, and I'm here with Killer, over that way. Yes, Killer Kimberly Bell. And Heather Gudenkoff is off again this week, but she will be back really soon, and we miss her. Kimberly and I are here, and we're so excited to be welcoming Ruth Ware to the club tonight. We'll be talking all things the perfect couple, and we'll be talking about killing of the fictional kind, of course. Make sure to drop your questions in the comments, and we will get to as many as we can. So thanks, you guys, for being here tonight. Kimberly, could you introduce our special guest?
I would be so honored to. Ruth Ware worked as a waitress, a bookseller, a teacher of English as a foreign language, and a press officer before settling down as a full-time writer. She now lives with her family in Sussex on the south coast of England. She is the #1 New York Times and Globe and Mail, which is in Toronto, best-selling author of In a Dark, Dark Wood, The Woman in Cabin 10, The Lying Game, The Death of Mrs. Westaway, The Turn of the Key, One by One, The It Girl, and 0 Days. I love them all. Visit her at ruthware.com or follow her on Twitter/X at ruthwarewriter. Congrats, Ruth, and welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm very happy to be here in the company of killers.
We are so excited. We'll be very gentle with you, we promise.
Okay.
And we are going to dive into the book in great detail in a minute. We have so many questions and things we want to talk about. But for now, can you give us just like a quick hit of what One Perfect Couple is about?
I would love to. So my main character, Lila, is a scientist, and her boyfriend, Nico, is like an aspiring actor. They've both got to a bit of a kind of crossroads in their career. Nico's in his late 20s, and he's still kind of hustling, and he starts to realize that if he doesn't make it now, he maybe never will. So one day he comes home with the best news. He's been invited to take part in this brand new reality TV show. There's just one slight hitch, which is that the premise of the show is that it's a couples show. You go on it with your boyfriend or girlfriend. So would Lila like to come on a reality TV show with him? And Lila's answer is no. She can't think of anything worse. But, she wants to be a supportive girlfriend. So she says yes. They jet off to this incredible island. It's like white sand, turquoise sea, little villas. Everything looks picture perfect. But on the first night, there's this horrific storm. The boat that the crew are staying on is swept away. And when the contestants wake up the next day, they find that the island is in disarray. The desalination plant has been wrecked, so there's no fresh water. There's very limited food. And as the days wear on, the tropes of the reality TV show start to play out kind of in real life, but for much, much higher stakes. And Lila realizes that someone on this island is out to survive the experience, no matter what the cost.
It was terrifying. On this island, I was sweating.
Terrifying and entertaining.
Exactly. Right. So like I said, we have tons of questions and I see them all rolling in already. And a reminder, if you haven't dropped your question in the comments, definitely add it. We will be scrolling through those to ask Ruth. But first, let's talk about this episode's special drink.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yes. Right. That's me. Sorry. I was looking through the comments. Okay. Yes. So as you guys know, the killers love our cocktails and mocktails and tasty drinks. So every episode, we ask our killer guest to come equipped with a favorite. And the recipes for tonight's drinks and all the killer cocktails that have come before are at killerauthorclub.com under the tab Killer Cocktails. So, Ruth, you chose the Kir Royale. Can you tell us why?
I did. So, well, partly I love Kir Royale. It's very simple to make. It's very delicious. But it also has a kind of, I'm not going to say starring role in One Perfect Couple, but it appears very early on. They sort of try and make a Kir Royale, but they're doing it on the boat with kind of slightly rubbish ingredients. And Lila kind of sips it and is like, I don't think this is what a Kir Royale is supposed to taste like. So anyway, I wanted your listeners to have the real thing.
Oh, well, thank you very much. We appreciate that. And those are really good. And I wish I had one right now, but I don't.
I know, me too. We're all three of us are in New York City. We're in very different spots, and I don't think any of us have a cocktail. I have tea.
I've got some water. Very boring. But next time I'm in a bar, I'm going to order a Kir Royale.
I know. We'll have to have a Kir Royale at Thriller Fest.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And we'll all
cheers.
Yes, but cheers. And thank you again for being here, Ruth.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Kimberly.
So the Killers and I started the Killer Author Club 2 years ago so that readers like you guys can interact with some of the best suspense and thriller authors in the business. Our spring and summer lineup includes superstars like Rachel Housel Hall, Sandra Block, CJ Box, Jeff Deaver, and Isabel Maldonado, and so many more. Dates, times, past episodes, all the good stuff can be found on killerauthorclub.com. But tonight we're here to talk about One Perfect Couple. Library Journal gave it a starred review and says, Ware once again delivers the literary goods with a cheeky sense of wit, including a blink and you'll miss it nod to one of her own books. I have to think about that one. A propulsive sense of pacing and a fiendishly clever conclusion. I'm going to come back to that one. I have to think about it and see if I can come up with which one that was. Erin Kelly, the Sunday Times best-selling author of The Skeleton Key, said, the ultimate Trouble in Paradise thriller, One Perfect Couple, is timely, gripping, and all too plausible. The Love Island Lord of the Flies mashup you didn't know you needed. Booklist also gave it a starred review, saying a fresh adrenaline-fueled take on Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None. Absolutely ingenious, bound to be a top summer 2024 beach read. So, Ruth, clearly you are a highly skilled and accomplished killer. Now we need to know your answer to the killer question, where do you kill?
So I kill in my office with the door shut in complete silence.
I love that.
Silence. So no witnesses to your killing.
Like absolutely. That. Yeah. No witnesses, no listeners.
An absolute perfect killing place, I think.
I love it.
A well-designed killing spot. So nobody ever comes into your office and witnesses your killing?
My husband does have a bad habit of wandering in and out, usually to find out, what we're making for supper that night. And I'm like, I'm killing someone. Leave me alone. Maybe I'll kill him. Perhaps he'll be my first real life victim.
It is hard though when you're in the middle of killing people in your head on your computer, and then somebody in the real world comes in and says, "What's for dinner?" It's just
honestly, what a naught to 60, or kind of the other way around, actually, 60 to naught, screeching halt.
Yeah, pulls you totally out of your story. Yeah. I like silence too when I write. I don't understand how authors can go and sit in a coffee shop or wherever and
play music. I know a lot of people who write to music, and I find it way too distracting. Even if words are out of the question because I'd just end up typing the lyrics.
That's what I would do.
Exactly.
Oh, excuse me. Where that came from.
Yeah.
So what I want to know, and this is, I'm sure you get asked this at everywhere you go, but do you watch reality TV? Where did this idea come from? Are you a fan?
Funnily enough, I don't really watch reality TV, or rather I didn't. So years back, I watched the very first series of Big Brother, which came out in the UK.
Yes.
I guess it would have been when I was at university. And all of my friends were addicted. We all watched it, completely hooked. And then I kind of trailed away in subsequent seasons. And I think it was a mix of kind of just real life getting in the way, because, it's it's a big commitment, reality TV, especially these days with all the, there's like podcasts and extras and, exclusives. And partly I think it was what interested me about the initial series of Big Brother was that it was, and I think this is kind of reflected in my books, it's the fact that it's exclusively ordinary people.
Mm-hmm.
And my catnip is just regular, ordinary people in extraordinary situations. And it felt to me like the early kind of series of Big Brother were that, they were just really normal people that you could imagine meeting in the supermarket or sitting on the bus with, in this kind of extraordinary social experiment. And for me, that kind of tailed away a bit in sort of subsequent seasons. And as the kind of formulas got more and more sort of glitzy and glamorous and artificial, it was much more kind of people living unattainable lifestyles, or people who are in it to get famous. They were going on the show in order to build their profile, much in fact as Nico does in One Perfect Couple. But I sort of came back to it a couple of years ago when they released The Traitors in the UK. And partly so the UK version is different to the US version, and our contestants are again exclusively ordinary people. They didn't have any kind of existing reality TV stars. It was just really regular people and a really diverse cast. It was like, people from kind of 18 to 80 and every walk of life. So it was fascinating. That in itself was fascinating. But I think I also loved the sort of crimey format. So for anyone who hasn't seen it, the premise is that there's a group of people they call faithfuls, who are the regular contestants. And then there's 3 contestants who are traitors, and they are out to lie and deceive the other contestants. And the game is whether the traitors can stay under the radar or whether the faithfuls can figure out who they are, which is basically the plot of one of my books. So this was just kind of perfect. And I think all of that sort of got my brain ticking on the subject of reality TV again.
Yeah, and that's interesting. I mean, do the traitors know that they're cast as traitors before they go on?
I think so.
They get picked. Whether the American version is different, I don't know, but they get asked as part of the kind of selection process for being a contestant whether they would be prepared to be a traitor.
Yeah,
and then at the beginning of the first episode, they all turn up together and they socialize together without knowing themselves who the traitors will be. And then the first kind of, not quite task, because it's not a task, is to find out whether you're a traitor or a faithful. And so that's kind of, at that point, they find out whether they've been selected. And you can see some people are really chuffed to be traitors.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
Some people are really disappointed to be faithfuls. And some people are really on the fence. It's a really interesting insight into people's characters very early on in the game.
Yeah, that's a great premise. I really like that, because really now I think everybody knows reality TV and the setup. And so unless it's a new show that nobody's seen before, but still, if you're auditioning to be cast, you have to know it's a reality TV show. So there's going to be like knives out at all times.
Yeah.
You're just waiting to go down, right?
It's a great format. And I think what fascinated me was that everybody who comes on it thinks that they're amazing at spotting liars. Everyone was like, oh, I'm really empathetic, and I think I'm a really intuitive person, so I think I'll be able to. They were all terrible, all absolutely appalling. And I think it's partly because the producers were really clever about who they picked as creators. They picked really like intelligent kind of people who are very good at putting on an act.
Right.
Well, and also I think that they're kind of working the cast behind the scenes, right? Because I know in your author's note you talked about that you had talked to somebody who was on a reality show and they were kind of giving you the backstage stuff. But did they talk about that? Like I don't want to say manipulate, but they kind of almost manipulate them. They get arguments going, and they're like, well, hey, have you seen that?
So the person I spoke to had been on The Traitors, in fact, and he found it a very positive experience. And I didn't get, he'd signed an NDA, so he couldn't tell me any kind of really juicy secrets. But I got the impression that actually there had not been a lot of that kind of thing on this show, partly because the game mechanics were so strong. It was really about playing the game rather than the sort of more, I guess, the more kind of bachelorette sort of,
or housewife kind of stuff.
yeah, housewife kind of stuff. The storylines are much more about the personalities, and actually that wasn't really the case on The Traitors. But I did read the autobiography of a contestant on The Bachelor. She wrote a brilliant book called I Didn't Come Here to Make Friends, which was very funny. And that was clearly much more, she was very frank about, you know, the amount of sort of egging people on to fall into certain roles and the kind of expectations and the sort of amount of alcohol and stress that the contestants are put under, which I got the impression was quite calculated on the part of the producers.
Yeah.
I think it varies massively from show to show.
Yeah. I think so too. Okay, so and Melanie wants to know if you were cast on that show, would you be willing to be a traitor?
I would be willing, but the problem is I'm an unbelievably bad liar. I'm very good at keeping secrets, so I don't think I would have trouble with that part of it. But if someone said to me outright, "Are you a traitor?" I think I'd be like, no.
And then they'd be like, you're the traitor.
Yeah, I would go bright red. I'm really, really bad at kind of purposely deceiving people. So I think I would be a pretty terrible traitor.
That's okay. I think that's a good trait, actually, to not be a traitor.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, here's my question I have for you. So every book that comes out, it seems like, especially your locked room mysteries, everybody's like, she's the next Agatha Christie. Is that like happy? I mean, it has to be a great compliment, but is that like something you're looking towards? Is she your biggest inspiration, or how does that work?
I mean, it's an amazing compliment, and definitely with some of my books, I have really strongly leaned into that. So probably like The Woman in Cabin 10 is my most kind of consciously sort of Christie-ish book, where I really sort of thought I've either got to pull away from this comparison or kind of just own it and say, yes, I owe her everything. I think she's a brilliant writer. And I decided to go that route. And I think some of my other books are quite Christie-ish in different ways, like The It Girl. The sort of the setting and the plot is not particularly Christie-ish, but the kind of the murder method and the sort of way it unravels, I think is quite Christie-ish. This book, I have to say, if I were going for a literary comp, I think I would go with Lord of the Flies before I went with Christie. But it is really difficult to write a novel set on a deserted island with a cast of characters who are being picked off one by one without thinking of, and then there were none. I mean, it's the granddaddy, it's the best. You know, as a crime writer, you can't get away from that. So it was definitely in the back of my head when I was writing this book, but I wouldn't say, I don't think it's my most Christie-ish book. I mean, to begin with, it's not really a whodunit. There's murders, and the people on the island very much like to know who is committing these murders. But I think really the kind of propulsive question that I hope will drag readers through the book is not who did it. It's there's a scene at the beginning where there's a man and a woman in the sea, and they're fighting. You don't know who they are. It's told in the third person, so you've got no idea who these people are. You don't know how they got there, and it becomes apparent that the woman is trying to kill the man, and the man is fighting back. And if he gets the upper hand, he is going to kill her. And so she believes she has to kill him first. And so that was the scene I wrote first. It was always the kind of the emotional heart of the book. And I hope what will pull readers through the page is the desire to know, how did things come to this? How did stuff on the island go so bad that this was the only way out for two of the characters?
Yeah.
Great. It's a great scene.
Loved it. Yeah. So how hard was it to keep track of all the different characters as you were writing? Because you have there are 8 contestants on the island. Is that right?
10. There's 5 couples. Yeah, 10 so 10 contestants total, and then a kind of smattering of staff and crew and stuff. I actually didn't find it that hard, partly because I think about my characters a lot before I start. So by the time I began writing, these people were like super real to me. They were kind of like friends. So I always had a really clear picture of who they were. What was more tricky was quickly conveying that to the reader, because there's one scene, and I couldn't think of any other way to structure it, where Lila meets all of the other contestants at the same time.
Right.
And that did give me an opportunity to have them all introduce themselves in quite a formal way, which was quite handy. But it meant that I just had to do a really quick pen portrait of each person and try and make them as vivid as possible, because I knew if they didn't stick in the reader's mind, then the whole book was pointless, because if you don't care about the characters who are being picked off, you don't care about the outcome.
I love what you say.
That was the tough bit. The bit that I found, so there were two things actually that I had to kind of really sort of, I don't really plot a bunch, but two things that I spent most time keeping track of was they all have different villas on the island, and all the villas had really similar names. They're all called things like, Ocean Dream or Forest Retreat and stuff like that. And I found it really difficult to remember who was in which villa, particularly because after the storm, half the villas get wiped out and they all change villa so that they've all got somewhere to sleep. So by the end of this, I was like, God damn it, who's in Ocean Bluff again? So I had a little list of like where everybody was staying. And the other thing that was the biggest headache was the book is kind of interspersed. So Lila is my main narrator and the book's told from her point of view, but her narrative is interspersed with kind of, I guess it's sort of found documents. So there's like radio calls and diary entries kind of scattered throughout.
I loved that.
Oh, good. I'm glad you enjoyed it, because those were the hard bits to write. And I always write the same way you read. So I wrote all of the diary entries and the radio calls in the same order you read them in the book, which means that because they don't appear in the same order as the rest of the narrative, I was often making promises that my future self had to keep. So like I would write a Mayday call and I would have to remember on the appropriate date on the island to go back and make sure that someone made that Mayday call. And it was fairly tricky, and I spent a lot of time putting little notes in the margin saying like, today's the 24th, must make Mayday call tomorrow.
But I loved how you thought it was going one way and then they changed kind of gradually to where you were like, wait a minute, what's really happening here? I just thought it was very clever.
Yeah, that was fun. I did get a lot of copy editor notes about those sections. I won't go into it too much because it's
good ones, good notes.
Well, and if you're just doing it as you go along, that's so creative, and also it's so vivid while you're writing it, because then you do those sections, then you go back to the story. That's just brilliant. I think that you can do that and drop those in and then carry on with the narrative.
It's the only way I know how to write. People often assume, because I often write dual timeline novels as well, and people often assume that you must write one and then go back and seed in the other. But the problem I find is, so much of crime is about trying to hold in your head what the reader knows, because so much of it is a kind of a game between you and the reader. What are they thinking? What have you told them? And the only way I find I can keep track of that is by writing exactly the same way that the reader will read it, because otherwise I don't know what the reader knows if I'm trying to write out of order. So it's not ideal, but it seems to mostly work.
I think it's working, Ruth.
I think it's working for you.
I think it is. So I think you're good. And I think
every time in the middle of a manuscript, I think this is not working. This is definitely not working. I should do the next book completely differently. But I'm glad to hear it came good in the end.
And you get on the New York Times again, and it's working. Yeah, it's all good. Okay. All right. So now, you guys, it is time, unbelievably, for our killer giveaway. Ruth is giving away 3 paperback copies of One Perfect Couple tonight to 3 lucky U.S. Killer Author Club viewers. Doesn't matter if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram. Just when you leave your note in the comment, be sure to shout out where you're from. And okay, here's the question of the day, multiple choice. Before settling down to be a full-time writer, Ruth worked at which of the following jobs? A, waitress. B, bookseller. C, English as a foreign language teacher. D, press officer. E, all of the above. Good luck, everybody.
Good luck. All right. So the Killers love our indies and we want to support them in any way we can. And that's why we ask every author to tell us their favorite, or in this case, favorites, because tonight we have 4. Ruth has chosen 4 stores tonight, all from her US book tour. We have The Poison Pen in Scottsdale, Arizona, Murder by the Book in Houston, Texas, Parnassus Books in Nashville, and Boswell Book Company in Milwaukee. Ruth, do you want to tell us why you love these bookstores so?
Oh, well, I mean, first of all, they're just gorgeous places to hang out. I mean, any room filled with books is a gorgeous place to hang out, but they're all really interesting, quirky shops. 2 of them are crime specialists. So if you're into crime, that's amazing. They've got the most brilliant selection. But I think what really makes a bookshop is the booksellers, and they've all got just such passionate, knowledgeable, interesting booksellers who you can just walk up to and say, hey, I love XYZ, who should I buy? And they will give you a cracking recommendation every single time.
I love that.
I
Well,
know,
I've
that's
got
the
a couple of those. They're great. So I just dropped that in the comments. I put them in there so you can stop by the next time you're in town and tell them that the Killer said hi. And I also dropped a link to bookshop.org to Ruth's book, so you can support all indies if you want to pick up the book from there.
And there you have it. Yeah. And as much as we'd like to invite every amazing Killer author to be on our show, there are so many fantastic authors and only 3 of us, but we can't let this evening go by without celebrating 2 very special authors with brand new releases. Actually, I think it's just 1. Okay, so we have The Southern Man by Greg Iles is out today, and Greg is giving away 3 copies to U.S. readers. And it's such a beautiful book. I just started the beginning of it and I was captivated. With Southern Man, #1 bestselling author Greg Iles returns after a 5-year hiatus with an epic novel that captures the political unrest of a nation dangling between a chaotic past and an unpredictable future. Penn Cage has been living largely in isolation, and he carries a mortal secret that separates him from the world. But Penn's exile comes to an end when a brawl at a Mississippi rap festival triggers a bloody mass shooting, one that nearly takes the life of his daughter, Annie. The sweeping, brilliant novel is a testament to his skill as an author and to his strength as a person. And we wish him all the best as he undergoes treatment for multiple myeloma, an incurable blood cancer, a disease that, as Greg put it, reawakened as he was writing Southern Man. So we're all thinking about him, and all of his legions of fans are too. Anyway, if you would like to purchase that book or enter to win a copy, we'll put the comments in there.
Yes. All right. So membership has its privileges, you guys. So if you're on Facebook, check out our private members only group called the Killer Author Clubhouse. This is where the real hardcore killers gather and share book recs, have all sorts of murderous fun, and we hold giveaways there. Every Friday is Freebie Friday. Every episode, we choose a name from the Clubhouse hat to win a piece of swag, t-shirts, mugs, candles, totes, hats, all of which can be found at killerauthorclub.com. And tonight's winner is Christine Geller-Mott. So, Christine, congrats. Please send one of the Killers your address, and we will send some swag your way.
We will. And Ruth, we have great news for you tonight. Whew. It was close, but you survived the Killer Author Club. So we're going to put this.
Although it's on your head now, so I don't know anymore.
Feeling pretty happy about that.
I think you should. It was close. It was close, but you survived, and we'll send you that little badge, and you can put it on your.
I love that.
Yeah, thank you, and we really, really appreciate you being here. And
thank you for having me. It's been a blast.
Okay, good. I'm glad, and sorry about the phone ringing, you guys. I didn't even know how to get it off. Who was calling me?
Not your phone. You don't know.
It wasn't. It was this. It was from the room. It was.
It's the hotel.
No one knows I'm here. I don't know who is calling me, so I'm just sitting on. Anyway, but Ruth, thank you so much. I'm very glad you survived and that you were here.
I'm glad too.
Oh my gosh. Okay, and I guess, is this me or you? This is you. Me? Okay. All right. Okay. Oh, right, because it's about you. All right. Sorry about that. Okay. You guys, that does it for tonight's episode. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. And thank you so much for Ruth for being here. We'll be back again next week at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific with, can you believe it, our very own, this is why it would be awkward for you to do, killer Kimberly Bell and her fabulous thriller, The Parent's Widow. The killers have been busy. I'm so excited to celebrate you next week, Kimberly. In the meantime, please find us all wasting entirely too much time on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. For all the information you need, visit killerauthorclub.com. And thanks you guys for all being here. Have a great night.
Thank you.